Billions of diseased and genetically modified mosquitoes are being purposefully released all around the globe, including right here in the US. They say it's to protect against deadly diseases, but for the first time in decades, malaria cases have been spotted in the States.
Concerns are growing as this marks the first time we're seeing local transmission in the US in 2 decades.
Conveniently, a man has announced a plan for a malaria vaccine. Weirdly enough, the man making the vaccine is the same man releasing the mosquitoes. And that man is Bill Gates.
The vaccine can have an effect against malaria.
If we're going to control these diseases in all the tropical cities of the world, it's going to require a lot of mosquitoes.
This story is being hidden and suppressed by mainstream news outlets. So-called fact checkers are blatantly lying, and I'll prove it here in a second. I can't say exactly why these news outlets are lying about this story, but Bill Gates' generosity could have something to do with it. The Revelo Project, on the other hand, hasn't received a single penny from Mr. Gates, unless he bought a hoodie I don't know about, which I wouldn't be surprised. We have some great merch. Link in the description. With that in mind, let me just say this. Bill Gates sucks. And here's why.
Bill Gates is the largest funder of trying to find these viruses in remote caves and bring them to big cities.
For the first time in 20 years, local malaria cases have begun surfacing in the US. At the release of this video, there have been 8 locally acquired malaria cases in the States.
Department of Health issued a statewide mosquito-borne illness advisory after confirming more cases of malaria.
These malaria cases only popped up after a tech company called Oxitec released billions of genetically modified mosquitoes into the wild.
Oxitec's lab, where tiny eggs are injected with a modified DNA strain, ultimately producing mosquitoes that have what's called a self-limiting gene.
Malaria in the US is extremely rare. It's also extremely deadly. It's so rare and deadly that just these 8 cases have prompted the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention to deem it a public health emergency. And malaria isn't the only once eradicated disease that seems to have made a comeback. In Michigan, 2 people have tested positive for the Jamestown Canyon virus. Some states are reporting higher than usual numbers in eastern equine encephalitis as well. This virus is almost exclusively transmitted through, you guessed it, mosquitoes. So is heartworm. It's hard to make a direct correlation to the release of Oxitec's Frankenstein mosquitoes and the rise of these mosquito-borne illnesses, but the convenient timeline has definitely caught the attention of Americans. Location is turning heads too. The 2 states that reported malaria cases were Texas and Florida, 2 of the only states where Oxitec released their genetically engineered mosquitoes.
Oxitec began the process of releasing 140,000 male eggs in 6 locations along the Keys. That is part of a live experiment.
But Oxitec isn't the final boss. This random mosquito-loving tech startup isn't actually random at all. It's a vessel for Bill Gates. Oxitec is funded by the one and only Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. The year before Oxitec began its mosquito experiment, Gates gave them $1.6 million. In 2022, Gates gave them another $18.3 million. All this money was specifically donated to fund mosquito field trials. The mosquito species Oxitec is releasing is called Aedes aegypti, which are known to carry diseases like yellow fever, Zika, and other deadly viruses. Supposedly, there is no risk that these specific mosquitoes can carry or spread malaria, yet the massive donations Gates gave to their mosquito field trials was specific to studying malaria.
Fires ended up, killing people. Electricity ended up electrocuting people. Almost nothing we've ever invented is 100% beneficial. And figuring out, okay, how do you deal with the safety issues? And we're seeing, as this technology becomes so pervasive, even a key tool of communication, there's a lot of regulatory issues that are having to be developed.
It's important to note here that the US is not the only place Gates is releasing altered blood-sucking disease-carrying insects. In other countries, like those in Africa and Latin America, Gates is open about the link between his mosquitoes and malaria.
The government of Djibouti teamed up with the company Oxitec to pursue an innovative approach to malaria control.
Oxitec is a biotechnology company, and we are the pioneers in using mosquitoes to fight mosquitoes.
Bill Gates is turning you, me, and the whole world into a gourmet buffet for billions of genetically engineered mosquitoes. And he's doing it with the approval of the Environmental Protection Agency.
Live experiment greenlit by the EPA.
He didn't get the approval of the people, though, and some aren't happy about it. The executive director of the Florida Keys Environmental Coalition said that the EPA forgot its middle name, Protection. And he correctly pointed out that the EPA hasn't shown any investigation that proves this experimental insect won't create infinitely more problems than it will solve.
You don't know what's inside of this mosquito. There are 0 independent scientists that have corroborated anything that this vendor has said.
He couldn't be more right. These are genetically engineered blood-sucking insects carrying deadly diseases, and they're being released right into our backyard.
You and I aren't done yet, you little bastard!
I don't know about you, but this whole story is beginning to sound like the start of a bad apocalypse movie.
It sounds like a science fiction movie that I'm going to go to the movies to see.
It does. It sounds like
yeah.
Jurassic Park-ish, and you have these like genetically modified mosquitoes pitted against these wild like mosquitoes.
Just listen to what I'm about to tell you. Oxitec genetically engineered male mosquitoes with a genetic kill switch, so that when they mate with the wild female mosquitoes, their offspring inherits the lethal gene and cannot reproduce or survive in the wild. That's the theory anyway. It seems pretty cut and dry. The bugs have a genetic kill switch. What could go wrong? Well, let's look at how this supposed kill switch works exactly. Oxitec engineered the mosquitoes to die in the absence of tetracycline, an antibiotic which is given to them in the lab to keep them alive just long enough to breed in the wild. The scientists designed them this way, assuming that the mosquitoes wouldn't have access to the antibody outside the lab. Basically, a failsafe to ensure that the mosquitoes don't survive in the real world and cause any unforeseen problems. But life finds a way. Get this, the antibiotics that the mosquitoes need to survive are known contaminants in bodies of water worldwide. This may sound like an alt version of the plot to Resident Evil, but I swear I'm not making this up. The EPA even acknowledges this. They've actually restricted the release of these mosquitoes near areas likely to have the antibody in the water. Oh, and just to add to the doomsday feel here, the experiment mosquitoes are called OX5034. And here is what the EPA says about the potential risk of OX5034 finding the antibody in the wild. To ensure that no OX5034 female mosquito offspring survive, they are restricting the release within 500 meters of potential antibody sources. 500 meters? There are only 500 meters between us and the survival of genetically modified mosquitoes? They go on to admit that there is, quote, a remote chance that they'll find the antibody in the wild and survive the mosquito lethal trait. Calling it a remote chance is very optimistic. There is already historic precedent to suggest that there is a very good chance these mosquitoes can easily travel way further than 500 meters after their release. And the government already knows this. They know this because they've already tried it. This mosquito obsession didn't start with Bill Gates. It started with the US military. Here is a FOIA request for an operation called Big Itch. And here is Operation Mayday. The US government has been experimenting with bugs for a while, like Operation Dropkick and Operation Quick Henry, which I've submitted FOIA requests for already. But right now we're going to focus on Operation Big Buzz. In 1955, the United States Army conducted an experiment called Operation Big Buzz. The goal was to find out if releasing disease-carrying mosquitoes into a population was a feasible method of entomological warfare. Entomological warfare is a form of biological warfare that uses bugs. To test their theory, the military dropped hundreds of thousands of uninfected mosquitoes into Savannah, Georgia, and tracked who they bit, if they reproduced, and how far they traveled. I could go on forever about the US government's obsession with mosquitoes. Like I said earlier, we've submitted several Freedom of Information Act requests to learn more about these various programs like Big Itch, Mayday, the bellwether tests, and many more operations related to entomological warfare experiments. Comment below if you think we should make a whole separate video about that. But what's really important to note here is the results of Operation Big Buzz. When all was said and done, the military collected mosquitoes as far away as 610 meters from the release site. 610 meters. That's 110 meters further than the 500-meter limit the EPA put on Oxitec. Oh, and in a separate report about Operation Mayday, the government said, quote, within a day, the mosquitoes had spread a distance of between 1 and 2 miles. Remember, Oxitec and Bill Gates are conducting field trials. We're all subjects in Bill Gates' reckless experiment. Just like the military did to Georgians in the 1950s, Bill Gates is doing it to us right now. And they're not experimenting on mosquitoes. They're experimenting on you and me and billions of unwilling participants all around the globe. Oxitec's history in mosquito experiments does not give me hope for the ones they're conducting right now. If you thought their experiments in Texas and Florida were bad, just wait till you hear what they did in Brazil. They released millions of genetically engineered mosquitoes in Jacobina, hoping to reduce the number of disease-carrying mosquitoes. But what happened instead was that the genetically engineered mosquitoes bred with the normal mosquitoes and affected the genetics of the whole population. Now there is a hybrid man-made mosquito population that scientists say is likely more robust than before. To the citizens of Jacobina, I'm truly sorry. That sucks. But I'm sure Oxitec learned from their mistakes, and that definitely won't happen here in the US. Bill Gates acts as if he is above the law of nature. He taunts Mother Earth and invests in dangerous experiments and watches as we suffer the consequences. He really is playing God, and it's kind of scary how much our institutions buy into this act.
What you have done to save millions of people's lives around the world.
Bill Gates isn't just throwing money at genetically modified mosquito experiments. He's also throwing money at those reporting on it, or those not reporting on it. A 2021 investigation by Mint Press revealed that the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation has donated over $300 million to legacy news outlets. These outlets include NPR, CNN, The Atlantic, NBC, PBS. The list goes on. And that's only the US-based outlets. Gates is known all around the world, and his mosquito experiments are taking place globally. The foreign news outlets Gates has funded include BBC, The Daily Telegraph, Al Jazeera, newspapers in France, Germany, and Spain, and so many more. Oh, and The Guardian, which in 2003 unironically called Gates Saint Bill. And it seems like the mainstream media will do anything to protect the sanctity of St. Bill. Look at this AP News fact check that says Bill Gates isn't funding genetically modified mosquito experiments. Yet, Gates' own website lists the exact amount of money they donated to Oxitec's mosquito project. Weird, right? We called the Associated Press in an effort to clear some things up, but I'm not sure they were entirely receptive. All right, let's call the Associated Press here.
If you are an AT customer, please press 0. If you are not an AP customer and have questions, please visit http://www.ap.org/contact us for further assistance. Goodbye.
Here we go. I guess I gotta submit a correction through their website. Be sure to subscribe and we'll update you with any corrections they make to this fact check, if they make any at all. We'll see what happens. The hundreds of millions of dollars St. Bill is dishing out isn't just going directly to the news outlets. He's giving money to charities closely aligned to the outlets, investigative journalism centers, press associations, and he's putting up money to directly train and teach new and upcoming journalists all over the world. The Gates Foundation has prompted scholarships, classes, and workshops through major learning institutions like Johns Hopkins University, University of California, Berkeley, the World Health Organization, and China's Tsinghua University. So no matter where you are in the world, you could theoretically train as a journalist through a Gates Foundation grant, get a job at a Gates-funded media outlet, and belong to a Gates-funded press association. No wonder they call him St. Bill. He's providing them with their livelihood. Mint Press was smart to note that all this funding is merely the tip of the iceberg. These are only money trails available to the public. The true amount of money Gates is pouring into the pockets of media giants is probably way, way higher. These zealots, framed as journalists, are paid by and fully devoted to the holy St. Bill, and the crusade has only just begun.
Probably try not to underestimate us. If that causes fear, then maybe it's appropriate.
The mainstream media won't say a single negative thing about Bill Gates' attempt at playing God and manipulating nature, but they will praise the billionaire for his vaccine development programs. Yep, you heard that correctly. Gates is in the vaccine business, and he's not just investing in any vaccine.
We need vaccines for a lot of things, not just epidemics. We need a HIV vaccine, a tuberculosis vaccine, a malaria vaccine. All of those things are in the works.
In 2022, BioNTech, a company that has received millions of dollars from Bill Gates, began human trials to test a new malaria vaccine. Okay, wait. Let me get this straight. Bill Gates begins genetically modifying mosquitoes and releasing them into the wild to fight deadly diseases like malaria. Then malaria begins spiking in the US. Then we find out that Bill Gates has a malaria vaccine he's testing on humans? It's almost as if he benefits from people needing a malaria vaccine.
And what about the smart solutions, things like genetic manipulation? Where are we on that?
There's a technique called CRISPR that can change the mosquito DNA in a way that either the population goes down a lot or it doesn't carry this parasite. And the potential there to reduce the mosquito population and therefore locally get rid of the disease makes it a very promising addition. Now, malaria is, of course, transmitted by mosquitoes. I brought some here so you could experience this. We'll let those roam around the auditorium a little bit. There. There's no reason only poor people should have the experience.
Is Bill Gates profiting off of the vaccine industry? If you even ask this question, you're labeled a conspiracy theorist.
You know, we've given billions for vaccines and saved millions of lives. If you just kind of invert that and say, no, we're trying to make money for vaccines and not trying to save lives, that's a popular conspiracy theory.
But Bill Gates has said himself that he does profit from the vaccine industry. A lot.
You've invested $10 billion in vaccinations over the last 2 decades, and you figured out the return on investment for that. And it kind of stunned me. Can you walk us through the math?
It's been $100 billion overall that the world's put in. Our foundation is a bit more than $10 billion. But we feel there's been over a 20-to-1 return.
If you still don't believe that Bill Gates profits from the vaccine industry, ask investigative journalist Jordan Schachtel. He followed St. Bill's paper trail through the COVID-19 pandemic and found that the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation made at least $300 million from investing in BioNTech, who was partnered with Pfizer to develop the COVID vax. That's just one small example of the money to be earned through big pharma and the medical industry. There is money in vaccines, and Bill Gates knows it. But his roots in the medical industry run deeper than vaccines. With money comes power and control. And Gates has the entire World Health Organization under his thumb. I'm not even exaggerating when I use the word control. That's really the most accurate way to describe the relationship between Gates and WHO. You see, over 80% of WHO's funding relies on donations, whether it's from independent donors, governments, philanthropic organizations, etc. These donations, however, are almost always specified for certain projects, meaning WHO can't freely decide how to use the money. In fact, WHO only has full control over a quarter of its budget. The World Health Organization is forced to do the bidding of rich donors. The question really becomes, who's in control of who? The Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation alone is responsible for over 88% of the total amount donated by philanthropic foundations. Other contributors don't even come close to that number, like the Bloomberg Foundation, which donates 3.5%, and the Rockefeller Foundation, which donates 0.8%. The Gates Foundation has consistently ranked among the top WHO contributors for several years.
Certainly the finances should be handled by the rich countries. A lot of those resources could work on other infectious diseases, measles and malaria. I see it as a pretty wise investment. For the developing countries, this surveillance will be good for them.
St. Bill is no saint. Is he really doing all of this out of the kindness of his heart, just for the benefit of humanity? Or is he doing it for the benefit of himself and his wallet? If it's the former, he's doing a poor job at showing it. Mosquitoes are already annoying enough. We don't need them to be genetically modified. We have no clue what kind of repercussions humanity and the environment will face because of this. We shouldn't use the entire world as a field test. Yet, that's what's happening. At the end of Operation Big Buzz, the military provided advice on how to defend against foreign entomological warfare and mosquito invasions. They said we should do things like cover up so mosquitoes can't bite you, thoroughly spray insecticide over infected areas, stay indoors, blah, blah, blah. I'd just rather not let Bill Gates dictate whether or not I stay indoors and wear a face mask. We've been through that. Let's try to stop this madness before it gets out of hand. And the first step in doing that is exposing that it's happening. The only good piece of advice that Operation Big Buzz has to offer is right here on page 60. Panic is one of the most important things to prevent. Now that I agree with. Don't panic. Act. Share this video. I'm tired of being an experiment.
Why don't we have a vaccine for malaria? Those are the things that I push forward. I wouldn't say I get angry, but I'm really impatient that we're not moving as fast as I'd like.
All right, I'm gonna call the Gates Foundation first about these grants.
Thank you for calling the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. Please leave a message after the tone.
All right, now I'm going to call Oxitec and ask about the donation money.
You have reached the Oxitec press center. Please leave your name, media that you work for, your phone number, and your email address, and we'll come back to you as soon as we can. Thank you.